thing we're going to deal with is just a sense of who we are, what we do. The purpose of today is to spend some time talking about what the Faculty of Music is like, identify some differences between high school and university in general, but mostly with respect to studying music. It's a little bit of a different animal if you've come from, say, high school band or choir. All of a sudden it's like doing the same stuff but on steroids. We'll talk about basic strategies for setting goals, time management, and that kind of stuff. And also put you in touch with some of the resources that will help you and identify contacts to ask for help. So the pictures you have on your screen here are, on the left is Ed Jerkowski. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Music. You may not have much dealing with him unless you get involved with, say, student government and Faculty of Music Students Association or other kind of activities, but he's basically steering the ship and dealing with a lot of the big picture stuff. As I said before, I'm Jimmy Maiello. I'm the Associate Dean for Grad Programs and Research. And at the top right of your screen is Laura Lowen, who's the AD for undergraduate programs. Most of the time, you'll probably deal with Laura for academic affairs issues, but sometimes it'll be something I can help with, and I'm usually around too. There are a number of different support staff people that you can ask for help, and it's good to get this out of the way right now because you need a swipe card, you need keys, you need to know how to register for classes. And if you're a graduate student, for example, Amanda Weeb is the person you go to for kind of frontline stuff with registration. If you're an undergraduate, Jennifer Wang is the student advisor, and she's incredibly helpful about registration issues, program planning. Sue Stone Scott deals with facilities, getting keys, signing out rooms, and all three of us, or all five of the people on your screen here, are located on the third floor of Taché, near the main office of the music building. So if you came up the stairs nearest the music office and you look down this long hallway to the left, you'll see a suite of administrative offices. Laura and I are down there. Sue's all the way at the end of the hall, and Amanda is just on the other side of the student lounge from that. So we're all kind of clustered in the same spot on the third floor. So you can basically run between the three or four or five of us and get everything you need. Our main mission as a School of Music is what you see on the screen here. It's to create, preserve, communicate, apply knowledge in composition, musicology and theory, music ed, performance. But along with that, we really take seriously doing this respectfully with students contributing to the cultural, social life of the city. We like to be good citizens, and it really is a part of who we are. We get out in the community a lot. We really, I think, more than a lot of other music schools I've seen, take community engagement really seriously, and we do take our jobs seriously as teachers and as advisors. So I hope you'll find that we're receptive to helping you with problems, and that you always know you can come to us whenever you need stuff. We're going to deal a little bit with what to expect in lessons and ensembles and classes. And we're also going to talk about a new mindset that's more amenable to making mistakes. This is really key for performance in a lot of ways, because you don't go into a lesson perfect. And we'll talk about some of what's entailed with that, but also how to apply that to your academic courses as well. These are the core values of the Faculty of Music. Among other things, collaboration and collegiality is something we take very seriously. You hear a lot about competition in schools of music. There's a healthy amount of competition, but we really work hard to support each other. And it's something we all take very seriously, from the dean's office to the support staff, to the students, to the faculty. Everybody does better when we all do better. And so we really take it seriously, and we try to help each other do the best work we can. We've also moved in some really good directions regarding equity and inclusion and diversity. We've got a really robust, respectful workplace and learning environment policy. And all of this contributes to the idea that at least I would boil it down to the fact that we try to respect each other as people first and then move from there. And I think you'll hopefully find when you get more involved with the faculty that you're really respected as a person, and that comes first. So you'll meet Laura Lowen at some point in the near future. She's out right now, but she's sent a video that's about 8 minutes that deals with some of the performance aspects of being a music student. So why don't we start with that, and then I can jump in afterwards. I'm going to stop sharing, and then we'll get into her video with a new one.
Hi, my name is Laura Lowen, and I'm the Associate Dean Undergraduate of the Desautels Faculty. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you today, but I'm glad to at least provide this video as part of the, I am sure, incredibly interesting presentation that Jimmy's doing. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of the slides in this PowerPoint presentation and then hand it all back to Jimmy. So I want to talk, oops, this is the wrong one, a little bit about being a university music student from the point of view of a performer. So when I'm not being Associate Dean Undergraduate, I am a pianist. I work mainly for the voice area here, where I run the diction program and teach the classical voice students how to sing in a lot of different languages. And I work with pianists at the master's level who want to become collaborative pianists, who want to learn how to play with a lot of different instruments. And so if you're a pianist, you're going to take accompanying the first couple of years and start getting a sense of what a rich life that is to be a collaborative pianist. If you're interested in making music with singers, please come see me, because I can tell you about the courses and stuff that we're offering for that. So the first question here is, how is studying music at this level different than what we experienced in high school? For me, it was a huge difference between high school and university, because I was the only person in my entire grade at high school that loved making music. I got a ton of opportunities to do things, but I was pretty lonely. And I loved going to university because suddenly everybody around me had the passion for the same thing that I did. We all loved making music together. And so that's one of the great things. The support and inspire each other point here is a daily part of life as a music student at the Desautels Faculty. When you perform, you're going to be able to do things that the people around you don't know how to do yet. And you're going to inspire them with the music making that you're doing. They are going to do the same thing for you. And so it's quite amazing, actually, how just being around your peers and making music together and hearing each other is going to help you all grow and start understanding how much music is inside of you. That's something none of us has really been able to do for the last 2 years. And I'm very excited about hearing all of the music making, hearing the noise and the loud volume at our faculty all the time. How is this pond different? Well, I think I just said it. We're all people that love making music. It's a stressful place. The thing that used to be your hobby is all the time. And you care, and so you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself to do really, really well. And we have to make sure that we're learning how to cope with that as part of a music student. As part of our journey as musicians, is having a really good balance of those things. And one of the greatest things that you can do is just to take care of yourself. Make sure that you're not practicing and studying every hour of every day. This is a marathon. You've got a long time to do this, and you have to make sure that you're taking good care of yourself. Go for walks. Be active. We have a running club. Join our running club if you like to run. Eat well. Make sure that you're getting sleep. Make sure that we are physical beings who make music. In many ways, we are athletes, and we have to take care of these bodies of ours. Being busy is not the goal. This is a really hard thing to maintain at a school like ours, where there's so many opportunities. And it's easy to say yes to everything that comes your way because you're enthusiastic, you love making music. But be careful, because it's easy to get overburdened, and then you're not able to do the kind of job you want to do at anything that you're doing. You're investing in yourself and in your growth as a musician and as a person for the next 4 years, and make sure that that's always first and foremost in your mind. So what I do as a collaborative pianist, I often get asked to do things that I really want to do. And sometimes I say yes to things that I absolutely don't have time for, and end up really regretting the decision over the next few years. So I was trying, just don't say yes right off the bat. Just thank somebody for giving you the opportunity and take a day or two to think about it. And this is where your MPS instructors are an incredible resource, because they can help you kind of manage this to figure out if this opportunity is something that you really want to take, or if it's maybe something that you want to wait for a year or two. And they can also help you figure out how to say no to things, because that's a hard thing to do. I always just make sure that I let the people know that I'm really excited about the opportunity. I'm sorry I can't do it. And I hope that we can do something again in the future. You never want to close the door. You just want to take care of yourself. So this is a little bit more specifically about practicing in rehearsals and performance. And so how are these different than in high school? Well, probably the standards are going to be higher. The expectations of how much you're going to prepare for every single rehearsal, if you're an ensemble, are going to be higher. Making sure that if you make a mistake in something, which we all do, it is a daily part of our lives, but that you notate it so that you're not making the same mistakes at every rehearsal. If you come to something and you don't know a passage as well as you thought you did, go back to the practice room and learn it so that you're always able to improve from one rehearsal to the next. Practicing is going to be a huge part of your life. It's a central part of our lives as musicians, especially as university students. We have a really beautiful, complete floor, the fourth floor, all designated as practice rooms. There's 40 practice rooms. And if you haven't been up there yet, I'm excited for you when you see it. They're all pretty big. They all have natural light, which is very unusual in a music school. And they've got fantastic instruments in them. So it's a great place to work on your craft. The rooms are big enough that you can really hear yourself. So I hope that you enjoy those. We have sign-up sheets for practice rooms starting next week. As first-year students, you are guaranteed 1 hour a day of practice, but that's not all the time that you can have in the practice rooms. If a practice room is empty, you can use it. If the person that signed up for it shows up a little bit late, then you're supposed to leave so that they can have the room that they reserved. But we have so many rooms that hopefully you won't have to wait very long for a next one. And you'll start to kind of feel the flow of the practice rooms. It's usually a little bit busier at the very beginning of the year than it will be in a few weeks. So if it feels a little overwhelming at first, don't worry. In a few weeks, it'll be easier. It's good to come a little bit before class if you can. I was like doing like an hour of practicing before my first class. And then I knew that I had that as a basis for the rest of the day. What to expect in rehearsals, like I said, just make sure that you're prepared to the very best of your ability. Nobody is expecting you to be perfect. Nobody's expecting you to get everything right. You're just expected to do the very best you can. And so work at applying the things that you're learning in your rehearsals. If you're not clear about them, make sure that you're asking your directors, to explain things or whatever a little bit more. And ask for help frequently. Absolutely. We are all here to help. We are all here to help, kind of be your guides on this journey that you're going on in the next 4 years. So Jimmy and I are always here for you to talk to or ask questions. The student advisor and the graduate student assistant also are amazing resources and that you're going on in the next 4 years. So Jimmy and I are always here for you to talk to or ask questions. The student advisor and the graduate student assistant also are amazing resources, and everybody in the office. So ask questions and make sure that you're giving us the opportunity to make your years here as enjoyable and inspirational as possible. I'm going to hand this back to Jimmy. Looking forward to meeting you all in the next few weeks. Bye-bye.
Okay, so before we move on, I want to touch on a couple things that Laura mentioned about performance. One of them is she made a comment to the effect of what was once your hobby is now something more serious. And that can be, at least for me, that was one of the toughest things for me to learn when I went to university to study music. I had been basically a band and choir kid, and I had a great time. I was good at it. I took it pretty seriously, but I didn't realize, I think when I got to university, that this was a different ball game, and I really needed to step up my game. And changing into that different mindset where it was not just fun, but rather something that was professional training and not just a hobby is a little bit of a shift in mindset. One of the things I would say though is to try and make sure as you make that shift from amateur to professional, you still remember why you got into this and what you love about it, and keep that as you're, you know, as you're working on a theory assignment late at night or you're practicing furiously for a concert. Don't forget why you love what you do and why, you know, you chose this, because it's easy to lose sight of after a couple of years of kind of treating this like a job. You tend to sometimes lose sight of what got us in there in the first place. The other thing is practicing effectively. This is another thing I didn't know anything about, and I really didn't have any training in, didn't have any help, and I had to kind of learn on my own. And it's different when you're in high school. A lot of the time you just play, and I thought that was okay, and I liked it. And then I realized I wasn't getting any better. And so when I went to university, it took me a while to adjust to practicing effectively. And it doesn't mean putting in the most hours. It means planning to practice, planning what you're going to practice. And above all, for me, it meant zoning in on the things that were not going well and spending most of my time on that. It's really tempting and seductive to spend all the time you have playing the stuff that that sounds good. But you got to really woodshed the stuff that doesn't sound good. And if you spend more of your time the good stuff, you end up getting better faster. I used to save the end of my practice session, last 15 or 20 minutes, I would save for playing through stuff I was good at. So I could leave, you know, feeling good about it. But I'd spend a lot of time in the middle section of a practice session just sounding awful. And I got really good at finding that rewarding. So along the same lines of planning your practice sessions is setting some goals. And we're going to talk a little bit for the rest of this this presentation about nuts and bolts things that you can do for setting goals and time management and study skills that, whether it's performance or academic, you can apply. And so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here, and we'll start with sorry, I'm going to put the chat here on the screen so I can see it. If you have questions, try and put them in the chat or stop me as you go, but it's tough to keep track of a lot of screens here, so you may just have to yell at me. Effective goal setting for me is one of the things that can set you apart and really help you get ahead and succeed. There's different types of goal. There's process goals, there's performance goals, there's outcome goals. Process goals are kind of best practices that you can do that may not lead to a result right away, but you say, I'm going to, you know, do lip slurs. I was a trumpet player. You're going to do lip slurs for 20 minutes every day. That's a process. Performance goals and outcome goals have more concrete outcomes, for lack of a better term. But you got to kind of make a combination of stuff that is a balance of process and product, so that you you don't always get stuck on just getting a result. It's really frustrating if, let's say, again, like you're working on, again, I'm a recovering trumpet player, finger tongue alignment, and you know, you're just not getting to your performance goal, but you can say with your head held high, I have done this every day this week. I've really, you know, put in the time on it, and I've done the work. And that's one of the goals, is doing that consistently, so I can make sure that I'm still happy with that progress. The other thing is setting small and large goals that basically feed on each other. So if you're looking at, say, a major piece of music you've got to learn, or a major skill or a paper you're writing, break it up into small goals. How are you going to measure success? Let's say you're writing a 20-page paper for a history class. I teach mostly music history. I'm not going to start with that as the goal. I'm going to say, okay, well, this week I want to get a good idea of what I want to write about. Next week, I want to get an outline done. Then I want to start, you know, fleshing out that outline, and I set small, manageable goals that I can measure. That's the other part of this, is I'm going to set goals that at the end of the week, I can say, okay, to what degree did I accomplish this? And they're not really that open-ended. You've also got to write them down. Make a plan. My trumpet professor, when I was an undergrad, used to make us keep a notebook and we'd bring it to lessons every week, and you would have, your practice notes in there, but you'd have your plan in there of what you were supposed to be doing, and writing that stuff down made it real. It's a lot different than telling your friends, well, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. As soon as you write it down in the notebook and start checking it off the list, it becomes actually something that's tangible. And then finally, you're going to have to adjust as necessary. What you start out doing is probably not what you're going to end up doing, and that's fine. Everything's got to be fluid to get you to the bigger picture. One thing I will say, though, that's difficult is to prioritize the most important stuff and take care of that first. You hear people talk a lot about this when they're looking at doing large projects or trying to make time to meet a goal. You put the big rocks in first. You prioritize what's really important to you. And if, for example, it's really important to you to increase your range on your instrument this week, then that's what you're going to start with. You've got to make sure that you make time for the things that are the most important and then work everything around that. Similarly, it may mean not just that what's most important, but what's most pressing. If you have a paper due this week, that's the big rock for this week. That's what you have to get done. And maybe some other stuff has to go, but you still have to prioritize what's coming up. Now, along the same lines, though, you got to take some time to relax. And Laura alluded to this when she was talking about health and wellness. It's a really difficult balance as music students and as professional musicians. And also to some extent as academics, you'll find a lot of your professors feel like this too, where we feel guilty if we're not working on a research project or practicing. And I'm sure some of you have experienced this where you have a lot of guilt every time you go to watch a movie because you feel like, well, I should be practicing or I should be working on something. That's not necessarily healthy, and nobody told us that. So number one, it's okay to reward yourself while you're accomplishing your tasks or goals. I have a good friend where I used to teach in the States, and he would stack a pile of Oreos in front of him when he had to grade papers. And so for every 5 papers, he would give himself an Oreo, and that was his reward strategy. It was probably the only reason he was doing the market, because I had a thing for Oreos. But the point is that if you reward yourself for accomplishing tasks and goals, you're much more likely to keep going with them. And it's okay to give yourself a break. The other thing I've found very helpful, and my dad was really good at this, work when you work, play when you play, and don't mix the two. If you're going to practice, go practice. Don't hang out in the student lounge for 45 minutes and say you were practicing. Sorry, I'm thinking of my brother was a saxophone major, and he got banned from the student lounge where we went to school by a saxophone teacher because he just didn't constitutionally have it in him to not hang out in the lounge when he should have been practicing. It was too much fun. And so it takes some self-discipline to say, okay, I'm going to do the work, get it done, meet my goals, but then you feel free to really relax. And I found that if you have something hanging over your head and you're trying to mix the two, you don't ever really relax. You don't really shut off. You don't really allow yourself to reward yourself for meeting a goal. You're always kind of like, I should be working, and you don't give yourself that kind of grace to say, well, I accomplished the goal I did for this week. I'm going to shut off for the weekend, or I'm going to shut off for Friday night and go do something. And so once you get in the habit, I think, of being as efficient and focused at your work as possible, then your brain will allow yourself to relax. And that's really healthy to be able to separate the two and compartmentalize. The other thing that I know sounds trite, and you hear this, all the wellness people talk about it, is getting exercise and water and fresh air. And it turns out that you're basically a houseplant with more complicated emotions, but that's the way it is. I find that I do my best work after I've gone outside, taken a walk, exercised, get some fresh air. I try to make sure I drink like 2 or 3 liters of water a day, because it turns out it's more important than you realize. I know if I haven't gotten outside, if I haven't had enough water, if I haven't gotten exercise, everything kind of gets foggy and cloudy, And so to me, that's one of the big rocks that I try to build in every day, no matter what. Whatever else I've got going on, I'll take that 30 minutes out and then go for a walk, because it's really that important to keeping me functioning. And then spend some time every day acting like your cat is the best way I can describe this. You got to sleep, you got to relax. If you've ever just watched your cat just sit there and do nothing, there's a real benefit to that. Sometimes you just got to clear your head and don't think about things and just shut off. And so the trick for me was to find a balance where you were doing enough work and also enough relaxing and enough self-care to keep moving forward in a healthy way. So here's the kind of nuts and bolts stuff. If you haven't done university coursework before, this can be very challenging. And it's not that you're not smart enough, and it's not that you're not ready for it. It's that there are some techniques here that that nobody taught us. When I was in 8th grade, we actually had to take a class called study skills that I don't believe is ever offered anymore. I know it's not offered where I went to high school anymore, but we learned how to do things like read a textbook. We learned how to memorize information. We learned how to study, how to have techniques for preparing for tests. In the absence of that, you're going to have to find strategies that work for you. And so one of the things that we'll talk about here is how to learn how to read a textbook, which is not intuitive. It's a skill, and it really is something that you can learn. We'll also, I think it's important, not everyone learns the same way. And this is something that you'll have to push back on when you'll have professors or you'll have friends that say, well, you should do this way. You got to do it this way. This is the way it works. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. I know it sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people will bang their heads against a wall because their professor said, this is the only way you should study this. This is the only way you can practice this. You've got to figure out what you need to do to learn best. We'll try to also talk in a minute about how to study less, but more intensely, and that'll make it more efficient. The same thing goes for practicing, but you also have to start the assignments early, and that was something I had a lot of trouble with. And then finally, in general, ask for help when you're overwhelmed, when you're lost. If you're in, let's say I teach music history, if you're in a history class and you have something you're confused about, don't wait till you go home, wait till class is over. Just raise your hand and ask, because we really would like to help you. So I mentioned studying more intensely, but more effectively. It turns out that you can boil down some really empirically tested techniques here, and they're going to be different for other people. Some of these may work well for you, some of these won't. It goes along with what I just said about learning how you learn best. But in general, these are some of the things that are effective and ineffective, and what we found over the years by looking at large data. Studying for long periods of time doesn't seem to work as well as shorter intervals. Memorizing large amounts of information is great for the test, and then you forget everything. So if you look at this list on the left here, it's probably stuff that you've done and, again, beat your head against a wall and not gotten anywhere. My favorite one is reviewing your notes. I don't know what the point of reviewing your notes is other than to read them over. It's got to be more active than that. Rereading and reading a textbook doesn't actually teach you anything. It doesn't help you learn unless you do something with it. So if you look on the right-hand column on this slide, all of these techniques are actually much more active and much more engaged. They involve you doing something cognitively actively or in another way engaging. So instead of studying for long periods of time, quiz yourself at regular intervals and then throw out all the stuff that you know and then focus on all the stuff you don't know. Space out short focused study sessions rather than trying to do everything at once. Figure out what the manageable chunks you can do are and then focus on that, because otherwise you'll try to do too much too fast. From a time management perspective, this can be worked in with practicing. Again, I go back to brass instruments because that's where my comfort zone is. You've got a limited window where you can do lip slurs on a trumpet. So if I can only make it through maybe 15 minutes of that, then I rest for 15 minutes while I do one small chunk of studying that I've already pre-planned out. Rather than rereading and reading a text, paraphrase what you learned, reflect on it, and write yourself a mini essay. Explain why and not just what and how, rather than highlighting and reviewing. And again, I just mentioned interleaved practice is the fancy way we talk about alternating different skills within a study session. And then finally, teaching somebody else is a great way to check what you know and to learn something. There used to be a statistic, and I'm not sure how accurate it still is, about how you retain about 80% of what you teach, but only 5% of what you hear. So maybe your engineering roommate may not be interested, but try and teach them something so you can learn it better. Sorry. Just a quick and dirty guide here for reading a textbook. If the textbook is well designed, that's a big if, but if you get a good textbook, they're designed so that you can make it through them quickly and so that you can absorb a lot of information with minimal effort. Read the introductions and the summaries of the chapters and sections first. That'll give you an idea of what you're supposed to get out of the chapter before you get into the details. Then you can scan the headings and the subheadings. Again, this is predicated on the idea that the textbook is well organized. Subheadings and headings are going to tell you structural things, and they're going to tell you what's important. Then at the next level down, focus on topic and concluding sentences at the paragraph level. So what we did was go macro to micro. Read the introduction and the summary of the chapter or the section first, so you get a good idea of what you're supposed to get out of it. Then you look at the headings and subheadings, so you see how that progression is going to work topically. Then you focus on, at the paragraph level, topic and concluding sentences. And if you think back to the, I don't remember what grade this was, maybe grade 4 or 5, the journalism questions from who, what, when, where, and why. Scan for answers to those questions for whatever you're reading. And then basically, if you get into the habit of doing this and you develop this skill, you can do a couple of pages in about a minute and actually retain stuff. This is a lot more effective than when a professor tells you read the textbook. What they mean is read the textbook, but do this. They just never say it out loud, and nobody ever told me. I'm not bitter about it, but a little bit, but I needed to be reminded how to do this. It wasn't really intuitive for me. The other problem I had, and this is ongoing, is that I really struggle with ADHD. And for me, time management was always a really awful thing to do. So if you look at the case study I've got up here, you say, okay, well, I'm struggling academically. I'm tired all the time. I'm late for my 8:30 class. I can't manage all my assignments. I schedule plenty of practice time and homework and time to do it, but it's not getting done. So this is about as specific as I can get. So if I'm honest with myself, let me map out my day. Well, let's say I wake up around 7:45. I get the bus. I go to class from 8:30 to 9:45. If I'm on time, then I'm going to study in the student lounge. Anybody see a problem with that right away? You can put this in the chat because I can't hear you unless you're yelling. Am I really going to study for an hour and a half in the student lounge? I'll save you the suspense. I am not. I'm going to meet somebody in the lounge. I'm going to study for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to hang out and talk for a while. Same thing if I'm being really honest with my schedule here. I have dinner, basically waste time till 10 on the internet and do nothing, and then I'm going to start my homework. So if I'm really being honest with myself, I'm wasting a ton of time in here. And sorry, let me move on to this. And there's a lot I can do during the day to make this more efficient. I just don't seem to have the focus to be able to do it, and I don't seem to know where my time is going. So two things that I think are important out of this. One is to look critically at your day and how you're managing your time. And the second thing is to really be honest with yourself about where you're losing the time. So if you, for example, if you were going to tell me what I could do better with the schedule, what would you point out as mistakes that I could correct or retool? And what would you say are things that I should be worried about in trying to manage my time better?